Hello, my fellow percent daily value of total carbohydrates. I'm Mr. Church. The Gleaming Depths and the new 4-star legendary effects have now been in the game for a couple of weeks, and in this video I'm going to be giving you my opinion on which ones are best. We're going to be doing armor in this video. I'm going to be giving my opinion, okay, and it is based on empirical data that I made up and also stuff that I experienced, and I did a lot of testing. So there's going to be some incorrect information because I'm but a man, but there's also going to be correct information because I'm amazing. So you guys can let me know in the comments how fucking stupid I am and all the shit that I got wrong. And if you would do it in like the nastiest way possible so that we can have constructive conversation, I'd really appreciate it. Now, because half of these effects only work on power armor and the other half work on all armor, including power armor, that means it's going to be hard to compare the stuff that's only available to power armor to stuff that's not available to normal armor. So what that means is I'm going to go through and I'm going to compare the effects that can go on power armor and normal armor. I'm going to assume we're wearing normal armor. Then I'm going to go through and do a second tier list, assuming that we're wearing power armor, and then I'm going to be using, of course, the power armor effects and comparing them with the other effects that are available to both power armor and normal armor. I don't know if this is making any sense, but it will as we go, and you'll understand because I'll be over explaining it the whole time because I like to mansplain. I have nothing else to do. So these are in alphabetical order and sorted by if they're power armor only or not. So up until tankies, these can go on both armor and normal power armor, but I'm going to be first approaching this as if you are trying to decide what 4-star you want to put on your normal armor, okay? So battle loaders is F tier. That's all there is to it. The effect allows you to instantly reload. You have a 15% chance to instantly reload when bashing enemies, and if you have a full set, it's up to a 75% chance. So you don't even have a full percent chance. There's no situation where this is going to be helpful. And a lot of the weapons that take a while to reload, they're not something you're going to want to use up close. So if you're in a situation where you need to bash someone to save time to reload, just run quick hands and hope to God that it goes off, because this is bullshit. And to take up that many slots for not even a guaranteed effect is just terrible. By the way, during this video, I'm going to be referencing this website, which is actually Scratchy from the Data Miners Discord. And I'm going to be linking the Data Miner Discord and Scratchy's website in the description below if you want to check it out yourself. Now, the next effect is bruisers, and this one is for normal armor. I'm going to put it up in A tier. Now, this is because if you're running a melee weapon and you're trying to min-max your build, this is going to be your best bet for squeezing the most amount of damage possible out of your weapon. Now, I was having some weird situations where I was testing this and I wasn't getting consistent results, so I'm not sure if there's some weapons where it's not factoring in the damage or it's not working. I would like to test bruisers a little bit more, but assuming that it's working, I'm going to put it in A tier for normal armor. Limit breaking is pretty good, but I'm going to put it in B tier. Each worn piece reduces the cost of crit hits by 10%, up to 50% on a full stack. You have that, and then you also run with critical savvy, which uses less, and you're basically critting every other shot. The reason I put it so low for normal armor is if you're wearing normal armor, you're probably not using a heavy weapon, and a lot of weapons that are not heavy weapons that you're going to be using in VATS to this degree are going to be commando weapons, and most of the good ones, like fixers, you can get it to already be hitting crits about that much without this. This maybe buffs it a little bit, but it's not really a huge amount. If you're running a non-power armor heavy weapon, then you could argue that this is A tier, but for the most part, this is a little bit redundant, especially when you consider that it's using up all of your slots on your 4-star effects. We have to keep that in mind. What's the best possible thing you can have on your armor? Now, this one might be controversial, but I think miasma is really, really fucking good. It's not only an extremely fun effect, and it does decent damage, but I feel that it is a actually kind of slept on a little bit, because in a lot of cases, it's actually going to be doing more damage to the things around you than reflective is, which we'll get to later, of course. Miasma is so fun, does a shitload of damage, and I also want to add that the effect, the gas effect, is buffed by Grenadier. And that means the gas cloud around it is going to be much larger, and it's going to affect more. It also makes a slightly larger sound. It's a super fun effect. It does decent damage. Now, miasma is capped. It's a set amount of damage, 10 physical damage and 10 radiation damage for 10 seconds per piece. So if you have a full set, that's 50, obviously. So you're doing 50 damage over time, and it's actually pretty decent damage. Now, the thing about this that sets it apart from reflective, I will mention reflective here just so I can give some comparison. Reflective returns a percentage of damage. So reflective will damage the things around you, but it's a percentage. Now, what this means is when you're fighting higher damaging things, like if you're in harder content, like, for example, the raids, or you're fighting a boss or something like that, reflective is going to be giving you a lot more bang for your buck, because it's going to be returning a percentage of their damage back to them, which is going to be a lot higher, obviously. Think about the imposter sheepsquatch, for example. Imagine that amount of damage returned back to it. That's a lot of damage. Whereas miasma is a set level. It's just a set amount of 50 damage. So that sounds weak, right? But like, I'm going to say that like 90, maybe not that much, 80% of the mobs that you run into on a day-to-day basis are low-level trash mobs, and this will absolutely wipe them out because it's not percentage base. It's just a flat damage. So against squishy stuff, it's going to just one-shot them, basically. And so reflective isn't going to do anywhere near that amount of damage to low damaging creatures. So it does depend on what you're doing, but it also is a super fun visual effect. It does decent damage, and you have stink lines. Why would you not want stink lines? Rangers, I'm going to put right next to bruisers. I'm actually maybe going to put it a little lower than bruisers. The reason for this is when you're trying to min-max your DPS, when it comes to melee, just adding flat damage is usually better. But when it comes to ranged, increasing your VATS potential, increasing the amount that you get out of VATS, is usually going to increase your overall damage much more than just adding a little bit of percentage. So I'm going to put it slightly below bruisers for that reason, because there are other options to increase your DPS besides this. And so I'm not going to say it's like, you know, amazing. In fact, I'm going to slide it down to high B, and that is going to be fine. Now, runners is interesting because this is going to get moved down later on, but if we're just talking about normal armor, then I'm going to put this in C tier because it does have its uses. Very, very small uses, but one of the uses is if you're running a melee build, for example, and you want to close the distance without using up your AP, you can get to that target and then you can power attack or use your auto axe or whatever, and you'll have all of your AP. So that is C tier for that reason alone. In any other situation, I really wouldn't recommend running it unless you just absolutely sprint around everywhere you go. And I want to remind you guys, this is C tier for normal armor, not for power armor. Now, sawbones is, in my opinion, A tier for normal armor. In fact, this might be one of the more powerful things. Now, on paper, sawbones just gives you 5 HP per second when you have a full stack. In the PTS, it was called mole rats, and it only worked in interiors, so they did buff it by allowing it to work everywhere outside as well, which is great. when it comes to normal armor, this is actually going to be pretty fun to use. Imagine it with solar armor. You have a full set of solar armor that's giving you 4 HP a second of healing. You add that to this, you're getting 9 HP a second of healing, which is actually a pretty decent amount. So it's a great way to stay tanky in that effect. And also on a bloody build, I think you're going to be feeling this amount of healing quite a bit. So if you're having trouble staying alive and you want to try something to get you a little bit more tanky, especially with the nerfs to Born Survivor, this is an option that I would recommend. I think it will make your bloody build a lot tankier. Speaking of tanky, we have tankies. And before I put this on here, I'm gonna tell you what it used to do is in the PTS, it used to standing still nullified ballistic damage by 15% for 10 seconds, and then there was a 20-second cooldown. So if you had a full set of it, you would have a 75% reduction, nullification even, of only ballistic damage. So you could think of it as like a budget version of Sentinels. Which isn't bad. It also has a really fun blueberry effect, which I really like. That's fun. And on normal armor, it's quite fun having these visual effects, in my opinion. The problem that I have with it is they changed it to plus 200 damage resist for 10 seconds while standing still, 20-second cooldown. And so what you get with a full set is 1,000 damage resistance. Only damage, not energy, not anything else. And the problem with that, and I'm going to be getting into this a bit later, is after a certain degree, stacking up damage and energy resistances has no effect. There's a soft cap on it, and you start to get diminishing returns because the more damage you're taking, you're needing to get a relative amount of damage resistance to keep up with it. So it's actually like completely useless in every conceivable way, because you're not going to feel hardly any difference between 1,300 damage resistance and 300 damage resistance. You might feel like a tiny tickle difference, but that's it. And the fact that it's only ballistic makes it much, much worse, because in my opinion, the most heavy hitting things in this game right now are energy attacks, and this is pants. So for that reason, I'm putting this in F tier. It is not good. In fact, I might even put it below battle loaders, because you might have one niche situation where you smack your thing and it reloads, and then tankies is worse. Now, I want to add though, this is where I initially put it, and then I reconsidered the blueberry effect is good. If you have a good visual effect, I'm going to give you extra points. Let's put it up at E tier and forget about it. So this is my basic overall tier list right now, and obviously things can move around a little bit. I wouldn't be that bent out of shape if this was D tier, and if we move some of this stuff down and it looked more like this would also be something that I'd be happy with. I would put bruisers ahead of the rangers, and I would put these about equal, honestly. I really like both of these effects a lot on normal armor, and I'll probably be running one or the other on most of my stuff. I'll probably try out some of these because I do think they need more testing, and I want to remind you guys that this is my opinion and I'm always wrong about everything I say. I want to also say that I scrolled up for no reason, and that made me annoyed, and some of the video that we already watched is going to be terrible now, and I hate myself, but that didn't really change it. I already hated myself. That's just like a second thing that I'm adding right now to say. Now it's time to get into the power armor effects, but before we do, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my patrons and channel members for your support. I really do appreciate it, and it makes a huge difference, and it really allows me to make these videos that I really do enjoy doing this, and the support means a lot. If you're interested in joining me in that way, the link for that will be in the description. And now, let's get back to the lying. Up next, we have, of course, power armor effects. Now, what I'm going to be doing first of all is I'm going to be adding a couple of these, and then I'm going to be adjusting where these are, because what you've seen now, this is your normal armor tier list, and there's going to be a completely different tier list now of if you're using power armor. So let's start with aegis. Now, AJ, this one is just ass, because what this does is fortifies physical and energy resistance by plus 50 and poison, cryo and fire resist by plus 20 for wearer and teammates within 50-foot radius. Now, if you have like a full team of all this, and you're wearing power armor, you're going to be over 2,000 damage and energy resistance. And I have to be honest with you, it doesn't make a fucking difference. Like I said before, diminishing returns you get with damage resistance isn't good, and this ends up being completely irrelevant. You don't really even feel the difference at all. You might feel it against like super weak creatures that wouldn't be a problem in the first place, but other than that, you're not going to feel anything. Now, it used to, in the PTS, reduce incoming damage for all teammates, and with a full stack, that was 25%, which is absolutely massive, and the reason why they changed it is this is a little bit too strong, I think, because reducing incoming damage doesn't have the same kind of soft cap that damage and energy resistance, so it was a little bit too strong, especially if you have a full team, so they did change it. But now, because of the change, it is, in my opinion, E tier. I'll put it above tankies because you do get technically more. There's no cooldown. It's just constant. But it's absolute ass. It looks really good on paper, believe me. And I even thought, well, maybe that amount will be useful. Maybe you'll feel 2,000. But you really don't. It's really just ass. It's funny to have the number, you know, and show it to people and laugh about it while you, like, drink your wine and it dribbles down your chin. What a moron. But, like, other than that, it's just not useful. I don't like it. Now, choos, what an amazing situation to be in. Now, this is one of those things that it isn't super, super strong, but it is so fun that makes up for it. Now, the effect alone, I'm going to move it up to A tier, okay? Because it's so fun. This is like what Pain Train should have been, and I would put it kind of on equal footing as miasma. They have very similar situation where they do a set amount of damage. This one does, you have a 10% chance to do 500 damage and bloody mess, so the stuff blows up when sprinting into targets. And so if you have a full set, you have 50% chance, and that's not too bad. 50% chance. If it doesn't go off, you can just turn around and hit him again. It usually does. And the nice thing about this is, unlike Pain Train, it actually works, and it hits multiple targets at one time, so you can do a lot more damage. It feels fun to use. It doesn't feel like shit like Pain Train. And also, I did see something in the PTS, one of the developers mentioning wanting to rework Pain Train in the future, and I'm thinking that would probably have some synergy with choo's armor. And so choo's, I choose you. Sorry. Well, that was disappointing. What a disappointing joke that was. And speaking of disappointing, propelling is terrible. Let me tell you what propelling does. Movement and sprint speed increase by 5%, up to plus 25% on a full stack. The game has a speed cap of 25%. You hit that speed cap with one serum that almost everybody uses. Now, let me tell you something, Bubby. If being that much faster is that important to you, that you would grind out the most difficult content in the game or trade for some of the most expensive stuff to get right now, you're not going to need it. If you could do that, you could get a serum. When you're grinding these raids, you get serums. You're gonna get speed demon serums trying to get propelling. It's absolutely foolish. There's no situation. If you want to be that fast, then use a speed demon serum. By doing this, it means you can't use any of the other stuff. I'm disappointed in it, and I think that it's terrible, and I think that it's sad, it's sickening, makes me want to barf. To think about a human being choosing to put this on their armor makes me want to weep. And it's one of the reasons why I'm in therapy, is just thinking about someone using propels, choosing, going out of their way They woke up with sentient knowledge. They had self-awareness and the knowledge that they have free will, and they chose to go onto the game, grind out the most difficult content in the game to have the most underwhelming garbage that also locks them out of being able to have the most OP shit in the game so that they can go fast. And meanwhile, their inventory is getting stuffed with speed demon serums that they're dropping on the floor because they don't stack. You can only go 25% faster. I mean, listen, they need to have shitty effects because that's kind of how things are. You have to have some shit so that you can have dilute the pool a little bit, have some garbage here and there. And I appreciate them trying to like think of different stuff you can do, but this one ain't it. This one ain't it. And for that, it is F tier and it is the worst so far. And now let's move to Rad Powered. Rad Powered is A tier. It's better than Choo Choo's, better than Miasma. I don't really hear people talking about this one very much, but it is one of the most powerful effects that they've given us. Now, Rad Powered gives you +2 AP regen at the cost of Rads up to +10 AP on a full stack. Now, on paper, what this looks like is kind of really niche and situational on paper, because on paper it looks like you need to have rads and those rads will be consumed, which will give you AP, and then you'll have for some random moment AP regen, but it won't be when you want it. That's what it looks like it does. But what it actually does is when you have a full stack, you just have +10 AP regen always. No matter what, no matter if you have rads or not. You could be running, you could be vatsing stuff, you could be using a jetpack, you could be anything that uses AP, and your AP will still be regenning through it. Because this isn't AP refresh, this is AP regeneration. AP refresh doesn't work until you're not using it. So like the powered effect on your armor, your AP isn't going to start refilling until you're done using AP, until you're out of VATS or whatever. But these AP regen fills constantly while you're in VATS. It'll fill up your AP bar. And while it's doing that, it's healing you of rads. So it does two things. It allows you to have incredible AP, which is going to let you VATS more, run more. By the way, this is one of the reasons why the runner's effect is ass in power armor, because if you're running around with rad powered, your AP bar, it doesn't go down. You can just see it jiggling up and down. You have infinite AP you can run for the rest of your life and you'll never run out. So it has the runner's effect built into it, assuming your AP is full. Like if you start running and it's halfway, it's not going to like fill back up, but you're not going to use any is the point. You're not using AP to run, because it's filling faster than you can use it. And then another thing is because it's healing you of rads, you don't need to run what rads. The main reason I run what rads is for the rad healing, not for the rad resist. When you're in power armor, you're already going to have really high rad resistance. And so you don't really need it for the rad resist, but you do, in my opinion, need it for the rad healing. I really love having something that always is passively healing my rads, even when I'm in combat. I don't need to ever worry about anything, and it's just always clean. It's always good. Part of that's probably like a mental health thing, but other stuff is, I mean, some people, it's, I think, having the capacity to have your health be as high as humanly possible is easier to do when you never have any rads on you. So this is going to be really, really great. It gives you so much AP and it cleans that out, which also frees up a legendary slot and allows you to have that rad scrubbing effect without needing it. Now, a weird thing about it is the AP is constant, but the rad regen isn't. You have to use AP for the rad regen to start doing anything. So you can be vatsing, you could use an auto axe, you could use a jetpack, you could jump, you could gun bash, run around, whatever. Anything that uses AP is going to like slowly heal some rads, which is pretty funny. One thing that is really a really good synergizer with this is dodgy, because not only is your AP constantly refilling while you're, taking damage and it's using up your AP, but you also every time dodgy goes off, it's healing you of rads as well. So it's a win-win situation there. Another thing that I like about it is I usually run like full powered on all my armor, but you don't need to because of the AP regen on this. And it's weird. It looks different than AP refresh because it's just a constant thing that's going up rather than like the chunks that go up when you have powered armor. But it's really great. Like having that amount of AP regen also is freeing up space on your other legendary effects, so you can use other stuff as well. For that reason, I have it in A tier, top of A tier so far, and you'll notice there's nothing in S tier yet, and that is for a reason. And now I'm going to make everybody angry, and this is where I expect you guys to go into the comments section with your pitchforks, sharpening them, trying to shove them up my... Now, this is the weird thing, is because everybody's acting like reflective as S tier, and it is, don't get me wrong, super strong and super good. But it's not S tier. It is A tier. I'm going to say it's top of A tier. It's better than rad powered. It's really strong. It's really fun. And it stacks with bullet shield and ricochet. What it says it does is it returns 10% of damage received from enemy targets back towards them. If you have a full stack, that is a full set, you are returning 50% of every damage that's done to you. Now, I mentioned this before when I was talking about miasma, because I was kind of comparing them a little bit. If you're in power armor, by the way, I'm going to move miasma down to the bottom of A tier, because that is affecting how I am going to be approaching it. Now, where miasma is doing damage to melee attackers, and usually much more damage to melee attackers than reflective does, reflective is also doing damage to melee and ranged attacks. So it is stronger than miasma, and like I mentioned before, there's situations where miasma is going to outperform reflective because of the flat damage that it does versus the percentage damage that reflective does. So those are different things that you need to think about, where if you're running around constantly doing stuff like in the world and not running raids or super hard stuff, I think miasma is going to outperform reflective. If you're a melee build, it's going to outperform it because you're going to be up close and personal, so it's going to be doing that damage back. I want to add, this does not proc the poison effect when ricochet or anything goes off. I did check it, because like, for example, Strangler Heart will proc poison when ricochet goes off. This doesn't proc that poison when it goes off. It's interesting because the miasma effect, in my opinion, is really good and really strong when you're fighting like lower level creatures and things that are weaker, that hit less hard. If something isn't hitting hard enough, reflective isn't going to be doing that much damage back because it's only doing 50% of the damage they do to you. That means weak stuff is going to do nothing. This isn't really going to do anything. And so for that reason, that's why miasma, in my opinion, is so strong, and no one's talking about how good miasma is, because they have the plague, and it's clouding their judgment. But I think that's fine. That's fine. The reflective is really, really good, though. Don't get me wrong. And the more damage something is doing to you, the more beneficial reflective is. You can go into the raid with reflective, and you can stand there, and every time the bitch hits you, it's going to be shredding itself, doing so much damage. And so it's really good. And the stronger the stuff is you're fighting, the more you're going to be getting out of reflective. So it is much better than miasma in, when it counts. But I wanted to say that about miasma. If you're running around not really doing that really hard stuff, miasma is going to probably be outperforming reflective. And let's not forget, it'll have all that stinker juice around you, which in my opinion makes it even more fun. I don't want to end on the crap one, so I'm going to put scanners in. Now scanners, this one, if rad powered didn't exist, I'd probably put it in B tier, because this is really helpful when you're a power armor build. AP cost of VATS attacks are reduced by 25% when you have a full set. And when you're in power armor, it can be hard to get that amount, mostly because you're comparing it to unyielding armor, where you have like just a shitload of AP to work with, which you don't usually have when you're in power armor. That's why the really powerful stuff is just power armor only, because they can't give normal armor that really really explosively strong stuff, because it will it'll make unyielding even stronger. So they can't do that for that reason. So scanners is to kind of help bring that in line. But like I was saying before, rad powered gives you AP regen while you're using VATs. And it's so strong on a full set that it makes scanners kind of redundant, because now you have rad power that's doing a lot more things than scanners, and it's doing basically the same thing that scanners does, where it's affecting the amount that you can VATs. So scanners make stuff cost less, so that means what that ends up meaning is that you can VAT something for longer before you run out of AP, right? If your AP is regenerating while you're using it, you also can VAT something for longer, and your rads are going away on their own, and you're just getting all this AP for everything else as well. So, and scanners does give you AP and shit. So scanners, for that reason, I moved down to D tier, and I'm actually going to put it in front of runners, because runners, remember, is also ruined by rad powered and ineffective because of rad powered. Some of this stuff could get moved around. It's all kind of mid in the middle, kind of midi mush. And one thing I wanted to say is that on power armor limit breaking, I might move up, because in power armor, this is going to actually be a lot more useful. You could even probably put it ahead of rangers. That might actually increase your DPS more than rangers does in power armor, because it's harder to hit that number when you're in power armor. Stalwarts is the worst effect in the game. Power armor breaks 5% slower for owner and all teammates within a 50-foot radius. And that means if you have a full set, you and your team, their power armor will break 25% slower. Do I need to explain why this is ass? Or do you guys understand right now? Have you ever had a piece of power armor break? I haven't. I genuinely don't remember the last time I had to repair my power armor. The fact that it's only power armor too, like it doesn't make your teammates' normal armor last longer. And the fact that like your armor isn't really an issue. Like keeping your armor around longer isn't really an issue. If this was like weapon break slower for you and your teammates, that might actually be useful, because there are some weapons like explosive fixers, they absolutely get destroyed when you use them. They break so fucking fast. Like I think it's bugged, like it's faster than it should be. And so you have this. I mean, I know that's what the raid team bonus does, so this is probably trying to complement that. I want to add that what it used to do in the PTS was 50 damage and energy resist to all users, so it'd give you plus 250 to you and your teammates. And like I said before, with the aegis, that's not good. That's not good. It doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't do anything. I complained about this one in the PTS, and I said someone on your team having this will ruin your damage if you're a berserker build, and they didn't do anything about it. When I saw that they reworked Stalwarts, I was like, oh, they listened to me. They got rid of it. They made it not ruin it. And then I saw what they had changed Abby's to do, and I was like, oh, never mind. Fuck that. So, yeah. I want you to remember like what you have available. You could be wearing reflective right now. You could be wearing rad powered right now. And instead you have a entire set of armor devoted to not your armor breaking. That's it. What the fuck? I can't believe that someone would put that on. So that is by far the worst. If I could put it over here, I would. It just keeps springing back, though, and I have ADHD, so I'll still try it a few times, I think, just to make sure. And, of course, now it's time to put the one that goes in S tier, and that's rejuvenators. So I think this is also being slept on. Right now, the big one is reflective, and that's fair. It's a really good effect, but rejuvenators is better. If I tested all of this stuff for a long time in a custom world, and I tested this stuff in the PTS, and I still feel that if I could handpick what I have on my armor, I'm going to be putting a full set of rejuvenators on my armor long before I get a full set of reflective. I'm going to be putting a full set of rejuvenators, maybe 4 rejuvenators and 1 rad powered to clean the rads, because rejuvenators is so strong. Rejuvenators, it says it gradually restores wearers and teammates' health. Now, it doesn't actually tell you what that value is. According to Scratchy's website, it's 1 HP and 1 AP per second per piece, so that's 5 HP a second. So already you can see that's giving the exact same healing that Sawbones does, and that's why I'm going to move Sawbones down to C. This is for power armor. If you have the option to wear either of these, you're not going to want the one that does half of the thing. But it's not a terrible thing. Like if you wanted to have healing and you got Sawbones, you could use this until you got rejuvenators. Like it's not complete ass, but it's like the worst version of that. So rejuvenators is absolutely so strong. The AP regen, it's according to Scratchy's website, it's half the AP regen of rad powered, but they both feel very strong. You can run around, your AP doesn't go down, so it's another situation where runners is completely irrelevant. And on top of that extreme AP regen that you get from rad powered, you're also constantly getting healed. So it's absolutely incredibly strong. Like I tested a couple of different armors. I gave it the sheepsquatch test, which is when I got just bashed over and over. This is a situation where reflective was pretty weak because I wasn't getting hit very strongly, so it wasn't doing that much damage back to the beast. But then with rejuvenators, I could just sit there for 45 minutes, and between my AP and dodgy and my health coming back constantly, the thing could never kill me. I could just AFK and sit there. So if you're wanting to have massive amounts of AP, which AP is honestly, AP is the secret to life. The secret to happiness in this earth is having infinite AP. If you have infinite AP, you will no longer have depression. You can cancel those therapy appointments. You don't need to talk to your significant other. You don't even have to hang out with the loved ones in your life. You don't need anything except for fucking AP regen. And let me tell you, this one gives it to you so much. It's so much. And allegedly, it's half the amount that rad powered gives. If that's correct, then rad powered gives you better AP regen, so it's still relevant and good. That's why I still have it high. If it was the same amount on paper, I still wouldn't move rad powered down, because rad powered is also doing that extra thing of getting rid of your rads, which I think is really good for high health builds when you're trying to keep your health as high as possible. That happening passively in moments of combat is really good. But rejuvenators, oh so sweet. What a beautiful thing to have. And after I make this video, if anybody has like any kind of, like if you hold anything I say in any kind of regard and you think that what I say has value, first of all, God help you. Second, I just fucked myself over because I don't have a full set of this yet. And if people think that it's valuable now, and now I won't. So that's good. Thanks a lot. That's okay. That wasn't the first time I fucked myself over, and it won't be the last. In all reality, though, guys, I want to remind you that I have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, and I just, like, guess stuff. Like, I tried the things, and I looked into it, and I'm telling you now. And I'm hoping that this will give you kind of a rough idea of what I think is good and what I think is bad, so that when you're going and farming these raids and stuff, or you're coming into situations where you can acquire these mod boxes, you know what you're actually looking for, because they're so valuable. You don't want to just fuck around with them and then find out. I've seen people that are trying to get full sets of abbeys together, AGBs, and then I just feel sad, because when they finally get that set together, they've just wasted so much resources, and they're gonna see that it didn't really have that much of an effect. And I don't want that happening to you. Some of you I want it happening to, but not most of you. So I'm hoping this video helps somehow in that way. Now, one thing that I want to remind you guys that also I didn't even mention yet is that rejuvenators also does it for your teammates as well. If you have a full team and everybody has rejuvenators, that's probably going to be brokenly overpowered to the point where they're going to have to nerf it. If they choose to nerf it, I hope they just make it so it just only applies to you. I hope they don't mess with the effect itself, because I think it's really fun to use, and it's really, really helpful in the raids, which are very tough. Sure, you could hear the heavy wink in that, because I want to have these toys to play with, guys. It's fun. I haven't even tested this with a full team. If you think about that, if you have a full team, everybody on the team, if you're together, is going to be healing 20 HP a second and 20 AP regen a second. So yeah, I do think this one is so high above everything else. That's why the only thing in S tier is rejuvenators. I'm surprised that more people aren't talking about this or wanting it. That's fine. More for me, you know? I'll take them. You don't want them, I'll take them. If you guys think that rejuvenators is ass, I don't mind. Just can I have your boxes? These are different because this tier list here is assuming that you want to make the best possible decision for your power armor, and the other one is the best possible decision for your normal armor. So that's why they're different and why it affects where these land. And also, this is my opinion, and it's always been wrong so far, so why would it be different this time? If you're looking for a place to share your camp builds, find people to run raids with, trade mod boxes, or just looking for a good community, I invite you to join the Discord server. The link for that is in the description. It's a great community, and I also stream on Twitch, so make sure you follow me. The link for that is also in the description. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.